There is something sensory, something real about contact with books, which is very important. There's the three-dimensionality of them, and to an even greater extent, the perfume of books, that particular smell they have, which comes quite simply from dust, from the paper, and also from the leather or paper binding. These are things that you can't measure at all, not even on a big computer. And it's a huge privilege for the user that this ITSEA library in Halle allows direct and simple access to these rare books.
Elisabeth Décultot is literary scholar at the University of Halle-Wittenberg. The Humboldt professor is searching for knowledge transfer in the history of aesthetics in the 18th century. Taking the example of the art historian Johann Joachim Winckelmann, she has been able to show how he exploited his excerpts for his own history of art. One important source for Décultot's work are the books at the Interdisciplinary Center for European Enlightenment Studies.
What I've found in this library are traces of ancient knowledge in the form of huge folios containing engravings of sculptures, mostly from Italian collections. And Winckelmann did not only read these books, he also wrote them down, so to speak, copied them, made extracts.
Winckelmann's handwritten library comprises more than 4,000 pages. Based on the way he read which books and the extracts he made, Décultot has reconstructed his interests. At the time, it was considered an honor if an author's ideas and quotations were integrated in another author's works. Nonetheless, Winckelmann erased many traces of his borrowings.
Winckelmann always presented himself as the reinventor or founder of art history. These extract notebooks are actually very strong evidence that he was indeed very well acquainted with this early antiquarian knowledge and had evaluated it, and that his works were not really the significant break he liked to present them as.
Winckelmann's reverence for the original is reflected in his art theory. He greatly admired the beauty of Greek sculpture and recommended emulating it. Sculptures like those in the Robertinum. This is where Elisabeth Décultot goes to find drawings and plaster casts. In 2017, she is curating a major Winckelmann exhibition in Weimar entitled The Invention of the Classical.
These plaster casts really enable you to reconstruct the spread of classicism in the whole of Europe. One of the fundamental questions on the development of art history is whether Winckelmann had had any visual exposure to the sculptures he described in his very first writings. It really can be assumed that he had only read the literature on Laocoon, and it was purely on the basis of this literature that he described this sculpture so beautifully. Winckelmann is usually seen as the great founder of classicism in Germany, but he actually writes in a very Baroque fashion. What we would like to show is that this supposedly classical tradition is really an invention. It's a particular way of reading Winckelmann and developing an image of him that is really only one element of his work. Of course, we do find noble simplicity and quiet grandeur in Winckelmann, but we also find a great deal of expression and movement.
In Winckelmann's time, Halle boasted the most important university in Germany. At the end of the 17th century, it was the point of origin for the German Enlightenment and the hub of pietism. The Frankische Stiftungen bears witness to the Christian-inspired reform efforts of August Hermann Francke, who built a home and school for orphans, together with a small museum.
The Cabinet of Wonders really is a very valuable testimonial to the cosmopolitanism of the early Enlightenment, and it was given to the orphans. What interested me most about all these writings was the historical and geographical dimension. And I think that is a very modern way of introducing children to the idea that there are actually lots of different cultures in the world. I find that really wonderful.
Kulturen in der Welt gibt, ja. Das finde ich eigentlich wunderbar.
Literature is something full of life, full of worlds for a child's imagination. The imagination is actually enormous. It has to be fed. And the aim of literature is simply to set the imagination in motion.
Bewegung zu bringen.
My daughter does drama at school, and theatre is a good way of going about
Theater
it.
ist natürlich ein guter Weg dazu.
Il y a des mains sur ma porte. Gut.
Es ist wirklich für mich wichtig.
For me, it's really important not only to be able to work, but also to live together with my family. This is never problem-free. Sometimes there are really intensive work phases when the family tends to suffer, but somehow you have to keep going.
Leidet, aber man muss irgendwie durchhalten.
Libraries also sometimes manage to defy the passage of time. The Marienbibliothek is an unspoiled gem in the crown of Halle's cultural heritage. The oldest Protestant ecclesiastical library in Germany houses literary treasures from the 15th to the 18th centuries. Here you can marvel at the private collections of learned minds, and Elisabeth Décultot is particularly interested in their classification systems. She wants to use her Alexander von Humboldt Professorship to campaign for the conservation of the books.
I'm fascinated by these collections of books in Halle. Some are world famous, like the ones in the Fränkische Stiftungen. Others are less well known, just like the ones in the Marienbibliothek. And there is no digital catalogue for those. I would very much like to do my bit to bring about a kind of alliance for Halle, based on these collections of books.
Auf der Grundlage dieser Bücherbestände.
Whether it is her love of the originals or her esteem for and analysis of extracts, Elisabeth Décultot scrutinizes the writing and reading techniques of our culture of the written word. She provides enlightenment, literally.